And we are rolling.
Coffee's too hot.
Is it? Well, leave it a little while and it'll cool down. It will become just like me. Cool.
Lukewarm.
Cold and bitter.
Ooh. And who's Luke? Anyway, I know this is the pre-intro bit, but since the last episode, I think that lasted over 10 minutes.
Yeah, but that's because you put most of it in.
Yeah, I'd like to have a little on-air chat about the channel in general. And,
okay.
well, much of our audience will know some of the struggles that we're facing because of the cunts in government at the moment, and I use that word advisedly. So there are some changes I'm having to make to my lifestyle, which involve me doing a shitload more actual work outside of the house and leaving me less time to do stuff. But I don't want to give it up completely. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've actually released 2 weekly episodes of Better Call Paul over the last 2 weeks.
I haven't, because I haven't been able to look at it as much. Cause
with minimal, the reason I bring it up is because I haven't actually done anything for months because I was doing what could be, I suppose, doing that old perfectionist job that we kind of. I'm just thinking, in terms of this, you might notice we're not drinking beer.
Okay.
At the moment, that will come back at some point when we've got a bit of money, but it's starting to bite at the moment. So we kind of, if at all possible, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but if we can try and keep the flow going, it would be so much easier for me to get episodes out if I can do a skim edit rather than actually listening to the whole thing through. And I mean, if we have like a massive bit of dead space, obviously I'll see it in the DAW digital audio workstation.
Okay.
But it's with limited time. I think it's important that we do, and I think it's
do you want to do the intro at some point?
Well, I haven't finished doing the pre-intro yet.
Well, it's not its own separate bit that comes about. You're just launching into a whole monologue bit, but.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to speak?
No, it's just that if this is part of the thing, then.
Okay.
That's bloopers, isn't it?
Bloopers? Oh, does that go at the end?
No, it's meant to be. Never mind.
Shall I shut up and let you speak then?
Yeah, I'm just asking if you do want to do the intro.
Me, personally? Or
no, you...
Do I want to do the intro? Are you offering to let me do the intro?
No.
see, that's what I thought you meant.
No, do you want... Well, you are part of the intro, because you do...
In other words, can we get the fuck started, is what you're saying?
Well, do you want to?
Do I want to start the podcast?
Oh my god, yes.
Well, I set the camera up and started Logic running.
So. On something, and I thought, oh, is this just going to be outside of it? But you sound like you were speaking, like, directed somewhat towards an audience.
Yeah. Oh. Well, yeah. But shall we start then?
Okay.
Go on then. But leave a bit of a gap so that I know where to put the music.
Well, that'll be your choice. Hello, Internet. I'm Firebolt.
And I'm the Orbiter.
And my brain stopped.
And
What? I'm working. Hello.
That's not your name.
It is. Star stuff is working.
Ah.
I can't count.
You can't count?
Well, I've got 10 things and there should only be 9 and I don't know what I've done.
Yeah, so we're going to try and keep things going so that it makes my editing job easier and I might be able to actually get the episode out on time, which would be...
Well,
we might have to get more professional.
I haven't been doing that, but then again, you've got a anniversary special that's nearly 2 months late.
It'll get there
Will
at some
it?
point. Yeah, at some point.
Before the next one?
Maybe. But I feel it's almost like we're doing a live stream because there's a bit of pressure there to keep talking. But I was saying about my Better Call Paul thing, I am finding that if you know that you're just going to be firing it out there after dark network style, that you've just got to keep talking even if it's complete bullshit, which it usually is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Anyway, what do you want to continue what you were saying, or do you want to just get into the news?
I think I pretty much said. I mean, yeah, the beer's absent this week, but I've got a lovely cup of tea. Yeah,
I've got coffee that's too hot.
I
My
think
mouth feels really dry.
I think the audience of all 10 or 12 of them, however many there are, will probably know that there's what's been going on. So, but we're going to do our best to keep things going in some form, and let's do that right now.
Cool. Right. Do you want to get into the news?
Oh, Jesus. Go on, then.
Right. So we have a new chancellor.
Oh, yeah. Was that the arse licker that used to work at Morgan Sachs, is it, or something?
Goldman Sachs. I think.
Goldman. What did I say? Morgan Sachs.
Yeah.
Who's Morgan Sachs?
No, you might be thinking of J.P. Morgan.
Maybe.
I think that's a bank as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it is.
All right. Okay.
But yeah, basically he was a housing minister, like a junior housing minister, a few months ago.
So basically, somebody who's going to toe do as he's told, basically.
Yeah, and was actually first elected in 2015. So
2015. That was before the referendum.
yeah, but basically he's been kissing up to Johnson for a long time since, like in the leadership debates. He basically stood in for him when he didn't turn up.
Wasn't it his dad's like some billionaire that's involved in something or other? I can't remember.
Google.
We should look it up. But basically, I see Dominic Cummings is becoming more and more he kind of faded into the background a little bit after the election, didn't he? But he seems to be
That's
on the rise again.
He kind of lurks in the shadows for the most part.
Yeah.
He doesn't really front up that much. Like every time that someone tries to interview him, he just says some incoherent nonsense. But
yeah. So the Right Honourable Rishi. Why are they called the Right Honourable?
that's what all the MPs are usually called, unless they have a knighthood.
Okay. His dad-in-law is Indian billionaire. Maharaja of the Dales with the 2 billion father-in-law. But they keep talking about him as being the next Prime Minister.
Although, to be fair, that is from The Sun and the Daily Mail.
I suppose. I heard that, is it The Guardian or The Independent are now owned by the same company as the Daily Mail?
I would be
One of the two.
doubtful.
Who owns the Daily Mail?
Rupert Murdoch.
It was one of, I don't know, I haven't read it myself, it was just a friend of mine told me that,
Bought the owner of the Daily Mail has bought the I newspaper.
the
and its website.
that's a different paper, isn't it? That's not the Independent.
Yeah, it was reported in the Independent. The I is different though.
Yeah, okay.
Although, from what I remember, it was okay and relatively reliable.
Yeah.
I can't remember much about it.
So what else is going on then?
Under the new...
I just remembered something.
under proposed rules for immigration now,
Oh yeah.
the Home Secretary that's putting him in place probably wouldn't be here if they were in place when her parents immigrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's another
They're all-
Windrush happening all over again, isn't there?
There's this popular thing of Gammons wanting to move to
It's absolute bollocks.
an Australian-style immigration system,
Since when
which
did-
Australians generally don't like. But it kind of makes sense because it does feel like the sort of Australia that I think a lot of those people are sort of fond of is just sort of like,
Empty.
well, yeah, it's sort of like the Texas of Britain.
Yeah. But I've completely forgotten what I was going to say then. Oh yeah, since when did skilled mean well paid?
Well, that's what they seem to think it means, but social care is considered an unskilled labour. But if you try and tell that to someone that actually does social care, good luck.
Well, they've actually closed down the social care and welfare department in Aberdeenshire and made all their staff redundant. So there's no welfare rights officer at the moment.
I saw a video of a cafe that was mostly used by pensioners, and the reporter asked them how many of them voted leave and how many of them think that immigration should be reduced, and most of them put their hands up.
Yeah.
But the entire cafe is staffed by EU immigrants.
Right. So when that closes down.
I mean, that's the thing. It's a lot of older people that are voting for this, but a lot of those people either are going to soon be in social care or need it, or are already in social care. But
Did you see the clip of the woman on Question Time?
oh yeah,
It's like she's sitting there saying, "There's no education."
I was just like, yeah, you're bloody proof of that.
Yeah.
But the thing that annoys me about that isn't like her herself, because I know people like that exist. It's more the way that it was presented by the BBC.
Yeah.
Like that sort of thing, by its own guidelines, should have some fact checking attached to it.
Well, I
Some
mean, the
comment
clip
on
that
it
I
to make
saw,
sure.
the clip that I saw did have the panelist basically saying to her that it's, you know, that they bring that foreign immigrants do bring more money to the UK than they take out of it, and the woman was just like saying, "Nonsense, that's not true." And it was just like a tit for tat, and you know, the panelist was saying, "No, that's fact." So I mean, they did show somebody on the panel saying that these are the facts, but
I mean, the clip that I first saw of it was just her
it probably
rant
didn't
on
show.
its own.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I saw the entire rant.
And that was from Question Time's official Twitter.
Oh right, okay.
See, I'm not one of these people that's advocating for the abolishment of the BBC. All I would say is that certain parts of it would need to be reformed, but like it still does really great drama and comedy, regardless of what it does news-wise. And the news-wise thing, it's when it's not trying to be opinion, it's okay generally, but when it has something like that, the balance is way off.
Well, the Tories want to make it a subscription service, don't they? They want to abolish the licence fee. As soon as I mean, obviously there's a huge variety of stuff on the BBC, and there's a huge variety of
doesn't the license
channels.
fee pay for things other than the BBC though?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of musicians that are directly hired by the BBC. You know, the BBC Symphony Orchestra would be pretty much one of the first things to go. And there's lots of other sort of hired musicians. Now, you got to think to yourself, okay, so whatever your thoughts about the value of the license fee itself, the end result is going to be a lot of people being made redundant. Now, surely that can't be good for the economy of the country. I mean, surely the people that are earning that money, who are working in the BBC, are contributing to the economy in their jobs, you know?
Yeah.
And regardless of what you think of the broad spectrum of content on it, I immediately think of something like Line of Duty and think, you know, quality programming like that, you just... How would that happen? You know, I mean, I know Netflix and Amazon come out with original content and that, but
Just on like history programs alone, you see what happens when that's up to the free market.
yeah,
It's just about aliens and Nazis.
yeah. And then you look at the
various
BBC
conspiracy
kind of
theories.
documentary content, and you've got all stuff like Blue Planet and
Yeah. And there are some good ones from Channel 4 and Channel 5, I think, but not nearly as much, and they don't tend to really focus on... They tend to focus on something that's, like, new and interesting.
But that whole saga, though, it's ironic to use that word, but seems to me like it suspiciously looks like it's been set up by the Conservatives. Because it's not that long ago that there was this big uprising against the way that the BBC were going to stop I think there was pensioners were entitled to free TV licenses, weren't they?
I think so, yeah.
Up to a certain point, up to a certain year, and they were it was due to be reviewed, and they were going to be taking that away. So pensioners were going to end up having to start paying it. And the Conservatives at the time were sort of criticising the BBC, saying, the pensioners have paid
That's
in
the
and worked all
weird
their life.
thing.
But it was part of their policy that it had to be reviewed.
Yeah, that's another weird thing, where they basically just keep complaining about these problems that they created,
Yeah.
or just making up new problems. But also, it seems, and I am biased, I will admit, that a lot of the things happening in the election campaign, like the mistakes, were kind of in their favour. Like, just one comes to mind right now, off the top of my head. It was question time, and they were having leaders of various parties on there. I think it's honestly just question time needs to be scrapped, if I'm honest. But he said something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm trustworthy, you can trust me," and the audience laughed at him.
Yeah.
But in their cut of it, the laughter was edited out.
Yeah.
Also, on that, there's a weirdly disproportionate amount of UKIP MEPs that have been on in the past.
Makes you wonder whether or not there's some kind of infiltration going on. I mean, if the government are working towards essentially privatising the BBC, having people on the inside to kind of hasten that along would be kind of beneficial to their plan, wouldn't it? And that is their kind of ethos,
I don't know, but I generally think that privatisation of that, would result in a lot of the less profitable things that are
What about CBeebies?
more like artistically rich, that they would be to go like the symphony
Proms?
orchestra. Yeah, that.
And there's a lot more
of
to
the drums.
proms. There's a lot more to the sort of cultural events that the BBC is behind than just the proms. There's across all styles and genres of music.
I mean, I think
And-
ITV
and other art forms.
A lot of ITV's like reality shows, isn't it? I think Love Island's on that.
Yeah. I don't know. But anyway, crossing the Atlantic, I noticed that there is already evidence being put forward of Russia meddling in the forthcoming election
Yeah.
already. But it's what do you do about that when all Trump has to do is tweet that it's nonsense and it's fake news? And people want to believe that because they want to be right. It's the confirmation bias thing, isn't it? You want to believe because you've supported someone. You want to believe that you haven't been an idiot.
I guess, but hopefully this last 4 years of him lying through his teeth on every issue and being proved wrong, because if you make a campaign promise unless you're stating some sort of fact, if you're saying that I will do something and this will be the effect of that, then you have that sort of thing that we had with Brexit, where you're like, oh, well, you don't know what the effects are going to be, even though all the projections show. You can't possibly know for certain. That sort of thing. Hopefully, I mean, and this is me being optimistic here, a lot of people have gone and seen the effects of what he's done.
Yeah.
And gone, oh, so he was lying when he said that. Like, he's like his whole campaign thing of building a wall. As far as I know, it's still like being prototyped.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with any of it. I mean, I was reading today about Scotland's police having basically had their hands tied because apparently, do you know about rendition?
No.
So what it is, basically the CIA, I don't know whether it's under their own rules or international rules, are like they don't want to be seen to be torturing suspected terrorists to get information from them. So there's a fantastic film actually called Rendition, which is based on what they actually do, which is they ship them, they fly them to more dubious countries, shall we say, to have them interrogated and tortured there.
Well, they generally did detain them in Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, but Cuba didn't actually want them to have that land, and they just keep paying for it.
The thing is, though, often what's been happening is that they've had to land to refuel, and they've been using Scottish airports to do that. And the police are kind of trying to investigate this, but they're not being allowed any access to. They've had a request for information from the CIA since it was either 2013 or 2015, and they've had no response whatsoever about these flights that are being refueled and going on somewhere else. They've asked the CIA for information on what these flights are and who's on board them, and this was 6 or 7 years ago, and they still haven't had anything back, and they're not allowed to investigate, basically. So, yeah, we should definitely watch that film. I would love to see that again. Very good film, Rendition.
I do find it very disturbing the way that America sort of portrays itself as the good guys.
Yeah, but it's like they're engineering these situations. You know, I mean, I'm not one of these people that is that far into the conspiracy theory that the Twin Towers was an inside job, but it certainly rests on American foreign policy's shoulders.
Yeah.
You know?
It's particularly clear with ISIS and how that sprang up.
And it's happening all over again.
That radicalisation is made a lot easier saying death to the West if the West is causing death next door to you.
The worrying thing is that it's happening all over again. They're encouraging this breeding ground for terrorism again. But the situation we're now in, is it 19 years after the Twin Towers thing? You know, I mean, we're doing... I'm doing other podcasts on the After Dark Network. We were doing a thing on different decades of music, and it really took me back to the 90s when we were talking about that and the whole atmosphere of life before 9/11. And it was a different world. And when that happened, everybody knew the world is never going to be the same again. But we're now 19 years into that, and they're generating another environment where something like that or worse could happen again, and everything's going further to the right. You know, it's almost like
with the case
it's just primed
of the Middle East, at least. That sort of rhymed. I'm hoping that because of the leak that basically the Iraq war was on the pretense of nuclear weapons, but...
Were the Welsh involved then?
What?
Were the Welsh involved? You said because of the leak.
Oh. Anyway, because it's looked like both America and the UK knew that they didn't have nuclear weapons, but went anyway.
Yeah.
That, there's not much trust in foreign policy in that region anymore.
No.
One thing that, though, is particularly worrying me, I think this may have been since we last did this, but we might have just not talked about it before. Trump basically came up with a plan that would mean Israel annexing several areas it's occupied.
Yeah, that was a while ago, wasn't it? But yeah, I think it was before the last episode, but we didn't talk about it. But the Palestinians are not happy with that, are they?
No. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are going, oh, but they would have more territory than they have right now. But sort of like, okay, but the territory that they don't have right now, that's because Israel acted illegally according to international law.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if the US signs on or not, it's international law.
Mm.
Unless there's a very good reason for that not to exist, anyone breaching that shouldn't be given special treatment and told, oh, you can just annex this.
See, the international law issue, there's a lot of criticism from the US about, well, that they kind of accuse the United Nations of not having any teeth, because when they've gone into these countries, they've not had backup. The United Nations have been really difficult to get to sort of sanction action, and when they tend to stay neutral and stay out of it as much as possible if America decides they are going to go in, obviously because America's so powerful. But at the end of the day, that's why the UN is a good thing, surely, because it means that they're putting the brakes on America's invasive kind of nature.
I mean, whilst I would rather that it could do more, it's one of these cases of, well, that's an argument to fund it better, isn't it?
Having said that, I think there's a film called Hotel Rwanda about the situation that happened in Rwanda. And that kind of neutral approach from the UN can clearly be devastating if help is needed. So it's obviously a lot more complicated than just
It's sort of
diplomacy solves everything. But
in that case, it's an international body that diplomacy is its main focus.
yeah. Mm.
And really most of what they try to do, rather than in air quotes peacekeeping, is more giving aid in those situations, like through UNICEF.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know much about the history there, because I think most of this happened in the 90s when obviously I wasn't as knowledgeable of what was going on. Kosovo.
Hang on. You weren't as knowledgeable about what was going on in the 90s?
Well, I'm not as knowledgeable about that part of
you're
history
not.
as some people are,
Yeah.
because you would have seen it in the news.
But I think I spent most of the... See, this is one of the things. I spent most of the 90s literally in a different world. But that's kind of... I don't know. I mean, I think it's difficult for me because I think that for most people, your 20s are the kind of partying decade anyway. If you're going to go off the rails, that's when you tend to do it. So
Fair enough. I mean, it's sort of when your body can take it to a certain extent.
yeah, if you're lucky enough to survive it. So
Well, that's why I say to a certain extent.
yeah. So anyway, do we have any more comments on the news at all?
The Democratic presidential race, well, like their nominee race, at time of record, actually probably by the time of publishing, depending when published, there have been 3 states that have had either caucuses or primaries.
Right.
In Iowa, Bernie Sanders got the most votes, but because of how...
I just think KFC when I hear his name.
because of how it works with like different precincts voting differently, I think just Pete Buttigieg, I don't know.
But a geek.
That
was what I decided in the last episode.
Got enough state delegate equivalents, but they've done a weird thing where like their official record can't be changed even though there were clear mathematical errors.
Yeah.
So I think in the end he got one more total delegate than Bernie Sanders.
Right.
In New Hampshire, which was a primary, because the caucuses are weird. I think I did explain that in the last episode, where like people stand in different parts of the room and you have to be there all day.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said it kind of, the word caucus makes me think of farmyard animals, but it's particularly makes me think of chickens for some reason.
Are you just having a weird chicken day?
Are there any other sorts of chicken days?
Well, it's just that you mentioned about KFC as well.
Oh yeah, maybe I am. I'll tell you what though, I had a free Nando's the other day. Maybe that was what it was.
Okay. I'm a bit miffed I didn't get to join that now.
No, the reason that it was free was because we in our many trips to Nando's have accrued enough chili rewards for me to have a combo and 2 regular sides meal, which I never get to have anything except wing roulette when we go to Nando's.
Okay, fair enough.
With you. And I wanted to try something else, so I did. I had the extra hot, what was it? I think it was I can't remember what it was, but it was hot chicken. And I had the creamy mash instead of the peri salted fries this time. Do you think we should get a sponsorship deal from Nando's?
I think we'd have a bit of difficulty with that.
Yeah, I fell right off the vegan bandwagon this weekend. I had a mixed grill last night with the band.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of, at some points, at least the way that you're doing it, more flexitarian. Like,
yeah,
if you're short on time, then
I don't tend to buy
to fall more.
Yeah, I mean, I could have, because it was a free meal provided by the venue. I could have chosen something, but when I'm at home, I'll tend to just veganify stuff. But yeah, I've cut back. Anyway, that kind of digressed a bit. Any more news?
Well, I was talking about the presidential thing.
Oh yeah, caucusy things.
In the primary in New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders won again the popular vote.
It's a cross between a chicken and a crocus.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Caucus. No, doesn't really work, does it?
No.
What were you saying about Bernie Sanders? Sorry.
He won the primary in New Hampshire.
Did he?
Although, for some reason, that means that you got
What is a primary? Okay, I was going to make some silly joke about, is that a school or something? But actually, it made me think, what actually is a primary?
A primary's, they vote in a fairly normal way, although I think it's still done through precincts, I'm not sure.
So is there like a secondary or...?
Well, that's like, because that's the first time that they would vote for the Democratic nominee.
Right, okay.
And then in the general, which would be against Trump,
okay,
that would be
yeah
their secondary, but they call it the general.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that's done more proportionally, or it might just be... Basically, they don't just stand in parts of the room, though. So it's a little bit more normal.
Okay.
I don't know. America has this weird thing with electronic voting that it just makes no sense because it's very easy to meddle with.
Especially if you're a Russian hacker.
Well, yeah, but you could basically go in... If you knew what you were doing, you could go in there and upload, change the different results.
Right.
If you had the right key or whatever.
Yeah. Get your old Bluetooth.
Whereas with paper voting, like,
what was it?
In sensible countries, you can't really mess with that.
There was a program me and Mum used to watch, one of these sci-fi things, where part of the hacking thing, they were always talking about bluejacking, which presumably is like hacking into other people's devices through the Bluetooth protocol.
Right. I mean, that's apparently quite easy, but you have to be within a certain distance of them.
Yeah.
Which is why they, I think, recommend that you generally don't
get near anyone.
Go on public networks if you have sensitive information on that device.
Yeah. Indeed.
Like to see them hack into my phone. They need a pickaxe.
Yeah. They could probably, you could do it like with clockwork or steam engine
Yeah,
or something. But
probably. It might work.
anyway,
And the most recent one was in Nevada, which is also a caucus, and Bernie Sanders won again, but in a much bigger way because they mainly think it's because he has high support among Latino voters, and the other two states are mostly white.
is there anything in Nevada apart from Las Vegas?
Yeah, there's quite a few cities. It's
Just lots of sand.
there is a lot of desert there, yeah. And actually, because it was used a lot for nuclear testing,
Oh yeah, yeah.
most of it's not actually owned by the state of Nevada.
But that used to be tourism, didn't it? Back in was it the 50s? Where people used to go to Nevada, to Las Vegas, to watch the nuclear tests from a distance.
Maybe, I don't know.
I'll tell you where I
I
found
thought
that
it
out
was
from,
mostly
'cause
under wraps. But
that was that not in Man in the High Castle that we saw?
No, it was the one where they go back in time. Not Travelers, the other one.
Oh, what was that program? That was really good.
With the big circly thing that they go in.
Yeah, I'll have to try and remember what that was. Anyway, do carry on.
but it seems like a lot of the sort of more mainstream Democrats in the party are catching on that he's the popular one. But for some reason, a lot of them seem to prefer the idea of Mike Bloomberg, who hasn't actually stood in any of the races so far, going up against Trump simply because he has enough money to do it.
I get confused, and he possibly is involved, but is there not a shopping channel in America called Bloomberg?
It's a news organisation, Bloomberg,
Oh, right, okay.
that he owns.
Right, okay. Fair enough.
He's, I think, one of the 5 richest Americans. I'm not
Speaking
sure.
of news organisations, I noticed that 20th Century Fox have now renamed themselves to 20th Century Studios because they don't want to have any confusion about any. They don't want people to think that they're affiliated in any way with Fox News.
Although, by the looks of it, more recently, Trump's gotten too much for even some of them.
Yeah,
I mean, there still are some that will attend his rallies and that are fully engrossed in that, but some of the more moderate conservatives.
I wonder if that's got anything to do with their Disney ownership now, though, because obviously Disney strive to be very. There was a thing. Apparently, there's been a MAGA protest in the entrance to Disney World, which is kind of like,
what?
Yeah, don't bother. Mickey Mouse wearing MAGA hats and stuff. Not Mickey Mouse himself, but you know what I mean.
Right.
It's like, keep politics out of it. I mean, I know Disney was.
Is there any particular reason, or is it just them being
I don't know.
arseholes?
Just arseholes. Anyway, should we get onto the subject, or have we got any more to say?
No, I don't think so. Just sort of basically, it seems now that Dominic Cummings is our new Prime Minister.
I wouldn't be surprised if that did happen, but no, he's too. He doesn't want to be in the limelight. He wants to be the puppet master.
But he effectively has the power because Boris Johnson is not a man who.
Wouldn't it be funny if he turned out to be a Russian spy?
Well, there is actually some speculation because he did spend a few years in Russia. I don't think so. He did spend a few years in Russia, I think, doing some study or something.
Yeah.
And it's not impossible that someone would have contacted him, and that's how he kind of got started.
He might not even
manipulating
know.
British politics.
He might have been one of these sleepers. He's just been activated. Maybe Brexit was his activation word.
Oh, who dares?
Anyway, what is the subject of today's podcast?
It is equality.
Okay. Right, okay, so I'm going to link it back to something that we've already mentioned, because the BBC have been involved in some equality accusations, haven't they? Equal pay.
Well, yeah,
issues.
because a lot of their male presenters earn a lot more than even like the top level female presenters.
Yeah.
Across the board, it seems like the men get paid more than women for very similar jobs.
I wonder whether or not, because with, I know if it was operating in a freelance environment, then it would be very difficult to police that as much. But if they're actually on the PAYE, as it were, if they're actually employed by the BBC, then obviously they have a lot more control over that, rather than just kind of tendering for services, if you know what I mean, because people can kind of demand what they think they're worth, and I suppose it's up to the BBC whether or not they actually pay it. But
I mean, I was watching Frankie Boyle's Tour of Scotland earlier, and he was talking to quite a popular Scottish comedian in Ayr, who had been to do a charity gig for Palestine, that Frankie Boyle was also a part of, and he'd mentioned it was kind of funny because the audience wouldn't expect someone like him to be there, I don't think.
Right.
But he basically talked about that if you see a female comedian, that you can probably safely assume that she's done about twice as much of the work, and
Twice as much of the work.
Twice as much work as a male comedian in the same position.
Oh, right, okay.
In terms of fame.
Yeah. Which is interesting,
And
because
he
I
sort
get
of
paid twice as much as star stuff.
I mean, that's different. You do different jobs, but
Yeah, true. And it's just because we can't afford to pay anymore.
he
But
did kind of analogize it to a saying that I think they sometimes have in the Middle East, that going into like a compound or whatever, shoot the female terrorists first because they probably worked twice as hard to get there.
Okay. Which, just on a side note, apparently Braveheart's getting a re-release.
What?
Braveheart, the film's getting a re-release. I saw it on one of the sort of Scottish...
Do you just mean like a touched up? Not like that. Although, I mean, I don't think Mel Gibson has the best record on that.
No.
Is it going to be a bit more accurate?
No, I don't. I think it's just the same film. It's historically inaccurate, but
Yeah.
there we go.
Can I protest on behalf of everyone from York?
If you want,
Okay.
go on then.
Protest. There you go. We're not really much into it.
Cool.
Eat chocolate.
I mean, it was like 7. Wait. Yeah, I think like 700 years ago or something. Or thereabouts.
So, what else? It seems like when we get to the actual subject, we struggle to talk about it. Maybe we should just bollocks report. No, I think we do tend to still reference news, but we'll perhaps, relate it to the subject.
Okay.
Equality.
Are you just struggling to come up with stuff?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep talking.
Okay, I mean, what you said about this MAGA protest thing how recently was it?
Well, I heard about it on, I think it was Disney Parks and Beyond, which was out this week. So it's only been in the last couple of weeks, I think.
Well, I know that Disney recently announced that it would have its first LGBT character in one of their
that could have been related.
movies. They said it was meant to be like a modern world that they're representing, but people have seen the script and apparently it's just one line.
Yeah.
Like references to her girlfriend.
they've kind of been hinting at that in a couple of films recently, haven't they? Where there's been like, you know, I think in the end of the last Star Wars there was a.
Yeah, but they do that in the least.
It's almost a token gesture, isn't it?
Yeah, they can edit it out very easily for Singapore or China.
Yeah.
I think the most obvious one I've seen is in the live-action Beauty and the Beast with Fu.
Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah.
But that's still implied.
Yeah, but it's quite strong if you're willing to see it, I suppose.
Yeah.
But this is an animated one as well. It's their first animated one.
Well, I remembered the one thing I said in the past that you tend to drive these podcasts when it comes to the subject matter, and I usually come along with one idea. I remembered what my one idea about this was. I wanted to kind of look at and make the point that equality isn't about people having the same chances or the same, what do you call it?
Equality isn't giving people the same help. It's giving the people help where they need it, so they have the same
chance
level.
Yeah. So they have there's
an analogy of like a short person, a medium height person, and a really tall person, and boxes.
Yeah.
You know, you don't give a box to the really tall person because then they're still going to be bigger than the little person.
Well, there's the obvious example as well that we've encountered is the disabled pass thing at theme parks, where you get access to the fast, you know, to less queuing, and a lot of people see that as unfair advantage. But at the end of the day, it's not, because you have so much more to deal with. So
yeah, well, I think a lot of people misunderstand what it's equality of there. It's like equal opportunities, because
it's not equality of provision.
I can't stand as long in a line as someone else, and certainly someone who's more disabled than me couldn't.
Yeah,
and wouldn't be able to get on as many rides already. That, you know, it's giving them an equal opportunity to experience that.
Now, I know this particular one is being discussed on the Disney podcasts in the network. I think it was Disney Parks and Beyond. But you got experience of both systems, because they changed the disability pass system. When you went in 2012, was it we went? It was pure and simple. You just got access via the exit or the fast or the express lane, so you just got straight on. And since then, I think it was 2013, they changed it because people were abusing that, and the law on it in I don't know if it's the whole of America, but certainly Florida, they're not allowed to ask for proof that you're disabled. So people were just turning up saying I'm disabled and getting the pass.
Right.
So what was the system when we went a couple of years ago? That was
I mean, I remember the one at Paris more because I was younger when I went to the Florida one when I was about 7.
I think the Paris one was similar to the one that Florida used to have.
No, with the Paris one, you got, depending on your disability, you got passes on certain rides.
Yeah.
On some rides you didn't get them, presumably because they felt you didn't need them or they weren't suitable for somebody with those conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were weird ones that they said, oh, you can't have it on this one because it was specifically because having autism, that's classed as a mental disability.
Yeah.
One of them, it was both in Toy Story Land. One of them was this drop tower.
Yeah.
But it had seat belts on it that you could undo yourself.
Yeah. So they couldn't guarantee your safety.
Vaguely understand why they'd say that for that one.
Yeah.
The other one was an RC Rover thing that was like a half pipe sort of thing that span around.
Yeah, you couldn't get out of that.
No, I don't understand why that was. Maybe it's the one, I can't remember if it clamped your front to your back, the thing came up from the back and pressed you into it. I
don't know.
Or if it was just a regular sort of seatbelt sort of thing.
Don't know. But what do you think of the system that we had a couple of years ago? Where because it was the same as it was almost like a fast pass system, wasn't it? That you and your accompanying party could go and get a return time. If the queue was less than 15 minutes long, you were allowed straight on, as per the old system. Right. If it was longer than that, they would give you a return time, and you'd go off and do something else and then come back. But you couldn't have more than one at a time, could you?
Yeah, I mean, it annoyed me that you couldn't have more than one at a time, because it means that you can't really plan what you're doing, which I like to have available to me. Well,
yeah, I mean, that's one of the aspects of autism, isn't it? You kind of benefit from knowing what you're going to be doing,
and particularly if it's something that you would get a return time quite a bit later, then you wouldn't really know what to do in the meantime.
No.
Could you have it where you could still go on the ones that were less than 15 minutes? I can't remember if you had a return time already.
Yeah, I think
yeah, because they didn't actually. It worked with your Magic Band, didn't it? You would get your return time via the Magic Band. They would scan that. But if they were less than 15 minutes, they would just let you straight in without scanning your Magic Band.
I mean, I would rather that you had more return times that you could use, but other than that, I think that system does work, whilst I would prefer the one where I can just go straight on, because I would just like to go straight on the ride that I want to go on. But I understand why that wouldn't be fair to some people, so I get why they've done that. But
yeah, and I think usually as well, there was usually something fairly close that you could go on while you were waiting, so
yeah.
But I mean, bearing in mind that every autistic person is different, as every other person is different, there are, you can kind of rationalize that. You can understand why it is, whereas some might not be able to.
But I could understand also from that why that might be a system that would work fine for me, but like for some people with more severe disabilities, like they probably wouldn't get to do something like that a lot. I know we wouldn't because financially, but we could go to other theme parks. Whereas
talking about disability, I had a rehearsal today for a show that we're doing this week, Legally Blonde, and totally didn't. It surprised me how natural it was that it wasn't an issue at all. But there was a girl in the cast who was in a wheelchair. I don't know if she's in the cast or maybe on supporting crew, because we haven't actually got past the band call yet. But basically, the rehearsal was upstairs, and some of the cast came up to listen to some of the rehearsal and sing along with it. And I don't know whether she didn't have any legs or just almost like stumps for legs, but there was very little of a sort of lower half, if you like. But she basically, the first time I saw her was because there was a wheelchair empty at the bottom of the stairs, and she was basically just propelling herself up the stairs with her arms, like really quite athletically. And when she got to the top, she was just like, it was almost like she was sat on the floor. And I was like carrying equipment, and it just seemed perfectly natural. You'd think it was a bit sick, but it seemed perfectly natural to just kind of step around them and sort of acknowledge that they're there and like just carry the equipment sort of over the top. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, excuse me. And she's like apologising that, but really good humoured. Obviously no kind of mental kind of issues at all, but It's just, it's the first time I think I've noticeably not felt awkward around somebody who's clearly severely disabled in some way. And I think that's a betrayal of society, or the society that I grew up in, that because, that sort of thing was kept almost behind closed doors or away from the sort of mainstream education system. They were seen as kind of other, do you know what I mean? Unknown kind of. And I think that is a big equality thing, because it's a similar thing with racism, isn't it? You get racism more in areas where people aren't used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we went through this around Brexit, basically, that there was this breakdown. I think it was on The Independent. I can't remember what episode we did this in. It possibly was immigration. I'm not sure. No, because we had Pete on that, so not sure. But we basically went through the sort of breakdown of demographics between Leave and Remain voters that they had polled.
Yeah.
And people in urban areas that have a lot more exposure to people from other cultures and that are likely immigrants, or that would probably be more affected by immigration, because most immigrants would come here for work in some way, and that's where most of the work would be.
I mean, that might betray some of the reason behind the statistical kind of percentage of racist people in a particular area, just in the same way that you could say that we were talking about the sort of generational differences in politics and that to do with Leavers and Remainers, you can sort of think, well, they grew up in a different kind of era, so to a certain extent it's not really their fault. But then you get people in the same situations that aren't arseholes as well. So it's not simply about what your surroundings were.
Yeah,
it's about how you actually think and feel and treat other people, whether or not you're used to them or not.
But like, it certainly becomes a lot more of an effort to be more accepting of other people if you're already in an area where most people aren't. And a lot of it's just about information.
Yeah.
Where if you're surrounded by people all saying this one thing that, oh, immigrants are to blame for why you can't get a job in this area, when it's likely Tories, or immigrants are to blame why the waiting lists are so high in the NHS, it's likely fucking Tories.
Yeah, which is ironic.
It's weird that
Boris
areas
Johnson's
probably
actually
vote for the Tories.
Yeah. Well, that's the.
But it's the sort of that
the double think
continuation of likely generations of that double think of just being lied to and believing that because you don't really. It seems like, oh well, something has to change here.
Yeah, but I saw a thing earlier on today. It was one of these kind of good old days memes, the pictures of how things were before. I think the caption on it was like life before the internet and video games or smartphones or something. And it was a picture of a kid on a bike, like taking off over a ramp on their push bike, and somebody else lying in front of the ramp, another kid lying in front of the ramp. And they was, doing like, have you heard of Evel Knievel?
Yeah.
Yeah, just doing like a sort of... And looking at that picture, and I saw all the comments from people sort of saying, "Oh yeah, the good old days," and it was like, and it was so much better than that. And I added my comment. It was like, no, it was still shit. It was just different shit, because it's like I would have been the one that was lying down in front of the ramp because I've been bullied to go there by the person that was trying to. It's like, I don't want to be run over, thank you. So,
it's like, oh, what's not good about a fucking broken neck?
Oh, it's only a tiny little ramp, but you know what I mean? It's just like, there's this assumption that because it was old and it's gone now that it was better. It's like, no, it was still shit. It was just different.
They're just the good things that people remember, I guess.
I mean, feel nostalgic.
A tennis ball in your mum's tights wrapped round your leg and spinning round, that was awesome.
Yeah.
They don't have that anymore.
Do you know what I meant?
It's easy to do that.
We're going to get all nostalgic after having said that, but do you remember, I can't even remember what it's called now. What was that tennis ball on a string round a thing?
Oh, yeah, tennis thing in a pole.
In the garden.
I mean, I know what you're talking about.
You've played this with us in the garden.
But you just sound so old describing it. It's like you're
describing...
describing...
Because I can't remember what it's called.
Well, yeah, but like you're describing it like a cup and ball sort of thing.
What was it called?
Old thing where you used to throw your ball up and it
landed in
it.
I used to get panicky
really
because
tricky.
like when the string got round to the top of the spring and it was going to pop up.
Yeah. Swing ball tennis, I think it might have been called.
Swing ball.
Something like that.
See, that is a bit scary because if you hit it really hard, then it goes up at speeds quite quickly.
You can smack your opponent in the face.
Well, yeah, you can smack yourself.
You're meant to hit it really hard.
Yeah,
that's
true.
the aim of the game, isn't it?
But like if you were just playing normal tennis,
health and safety.
If you're just playing normal tennis, then like you can dodge that fairly easily. But this one, like, it's swinging around at your face.
You ever played dodgeball at school?
Yeah.
Is that not dangerous? Like, is that not like a good excuse for a teacher to like throw a ball at kids as hard as they can?
Not if
Well, I don't think-
I'll throw it back at them.
I don't think that the way that we play dodgeball is the same as you did. Like, I always find it weird, like this thing in American TV shows where it's just like, oh, everyone pelts the balls at one kid,
Yeah.
and like they have to shield themselves or something. But no, we had it where, well, there were actually two versions that we had. One where a couple of people had dodgeballs that they could throw at people
Yeah.
around and knock them out. Not literally, like knock them out of the game.
Yeah.
A sort of like a game of tag, kind of, but where you could throw balls instead of like physically tagging them. And we had one where people on either side, there was an equal number on either side, and you'd throw dodgeballs at one another, and if they hit you, you'd be out. But if you caught one from someone else, then they'd be out.
Now, I'm going to bring up, I'm going to try and veer back onto subject and talk about equality in terms of certain demographics like genders or races or nationalities is one thing. But when you talk about different categories of people within society, such as, say, convicted criminals,
Right.
how far do you think equality should be applied there? For instance, I don't think you get a vote, do you, if you're in prison? Is that right?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
I think prisoners should get votes.
I do.
They're affected by the system, and quite often it's black people that are disproportionately hurt by the current systems because of the way that drug offences work, particularly in America.
The thing that worries me, I think, about not having a political say as a prisoner is that you know it doesn't take much for a society to imprison people who disagree with the state.
Well, yeah, that's kind of where I was going.
That's kind of what crime is, really, isn't it? Although the state kind of, I mean, there are, I'm not saying that the law is wrong, but there are situations where the law can be manipulated by the state.
Yeah, but there's definitely a lot of people that have done a lot of wrong things that still get as much of a vote or can influence
they get
it
a vote
even
in
more
America.
than just a vote. What?
I don't know if they get a vote in America because
No, they don't.
Right, because I know that's a lot more like the health service. That's a lot more privatised,
Which
isn't it?
continues this idea of, it continues the current system so
Yeah.
that people that probably wouldn't vote for the current system because it put them in prison unjustly sometimes, don't get to have a voice in changing that. And I think in any free democratic society that
I think that would be
everyone of a mental capacity able to vote
that becomes especially
should be able
worrying.
to vote.
That becomes especially worrying when you're talking about the kind of situations that we've had over the past year with the climate protests.
Well, yeah. That definitely feels like it's going along a road of saying, oh, but this is illegal, you're criminalised, locking them up, and then the court saying, oh, but that's wrong, but, oh no, let's ignore those courts.
Well, see, that's the thing. The courts have pretty much stood by the activists.
Yeah,
at
well,
the
recently...
start, but, yeah, the government are trying to limit courts' powers now, aren't they?
There's that. Accidentally, apparently, it was printed in advice on terrorist organisations that Extinction Rebellion was something to watch out for, and that was given out to teachers and other mentors.
Yeah.
It has actually more recently been put on a list of symbols, not as a terrorist organisation, but a list of symbols to be aware of, which they're trying to say of, oh, but we're saying it so that they know that this isn't a bad thing, even though it's beside other things that are definitely bad things.
It just feels like they're goading people to rise up so that they've got something they can legitimately look as though they're clamping down on and take away rights in the process.
still find it really disturbing, the inaction on climate.
Yeah.
Given that I think the current sort of trajectory for a lot of governments is to cut emissions. This is just carbon emissions, by the way, because methane's actually a lot worse.
Yeah, but that's coming out, isn't it? In the Antarctic, pockets of methane gas are going to be released.
Yeah, that's one of the things. It's sort of this chain reaction. It has runaway effects.
Speaking of which, pardon me,
polluter.
I am.
But yeah, basically, if we even do that, which is honestly doubtful,
do you think it's less environmentally damaging?
It's about a 50% chance of stopping a 1.5 degrees C rise in temperature.
Do you think it's less environmentally damaging if you light your farts?
I don't think so.
No? Because you're burning off the methane then, aren't you?
I mean, that's one of the biggest contributions from agriculture because of cows farting.
Yeah. But
well, actually, more burping, to be honest. But
I wonder whether or not there's I mean, I tend to fart a lot more when I'm eating meat as well. So there's got to be some human input there.
Not a huge amount. But one of the things that I'm saying this for is because the UK is trying to sort of go towards the thing of saying, oh, but natural gas, that's fine. Because we're not
because
using...
it's natural.
Well, no, because it's not using carbon, it's using methane instead. But because they're technically correct in saying, oh, we've reduced carbon emissions, but we're using methane, which I think is like 84 times worse.
Yeah, do they think people are stupid?
Well, yes, they're right.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it?
I mean,
clearly we're not talking to our audience because we wouldn't want to insult them.
Oh, I know some in our audience are stupid. In fact, I've talked to them.
Are you willing to name these people?
No.
Damn shame.
Don't
worry, Craig, it's not you.
That was actually who I was talking about. But
was it?
No. Like, I was joking, kind of.
Yeah, backpedal.
Do you like a shovel?
He's been lovely. Do you know what he did? They've just been.
He's nice, but he's not the brightest. In all honesty.
Honest, no, what you
Sorry.
Can't. He's our biggest supporter.
Sorry. I mean, that doesn't count in your favour, really. But
do you know what he did? They've been in New York, his family, for the last week, and they did a meow in New York for us because they said, "Has anyone ever said meow in New York?"
I imagine so.
Well, they have now.
Okay.
On our behalf.
Well, it'd be the first person to say it. Actually, we might have said it in New York.
Yeah, we might have done.
I imagine we must have.
Imagine all the bad tunes because I don't want to get a copyright strike. No, I did that deliberately. It was so that we don't get struck down by the god of copyright who lives in the tube of you. Do you know the wedding last night? The videographer.
The tube of you.
No, the videographer.
Well, I've not heard that before, but
it wasn't a wedding. It wasn't even a wedding, and I'm saying the wedding last night. The dinner dance we did last night. The videographer is like about 90, 70 years old.
Okay.
And I cannot understand it. He's like the broadest. It's not Aberdonian, is it? What do you call it? Doric. Accent. It's really difficult to understand. Anyway, but he's very old, very doddery, and I'm not the only one who can't understand him. There are people from around here, like our singer as well, can understand him. But he turns around to me and he says, I'm not going to try and do the accent because I'm going to make a complete twat of myself if I do so. But he turns around to me and says,
anyway.
Have you watched that YouTube? Because he was talking about something in particular that he'd said that he'd watched, but he was like, it just came across as like, do you ever watch that YouTube program? You know, it's like, I'm like, yeah, I've seen a few things on it. Anything in particular, or but Anyway, and it's got one of these cameras that's like it's almost like something you'd see in an old TV studio that you like basically carry around on your shoulder, and it's got a big like digital cassette tape in it.
Like that one out of Still Game. Or like
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Like the one my dad used to have.
has he not still got it? I'm sure he must still have it.
Possibly still have it. Doesn't use it anymore though.
Well, he has more up-to-date things now, like a drone.
Yeah, he must have a license for that, surely.
Yeah, he had to do training.
Yeah,
Cool.
unless you work for the US military.
Well, I imagine they do get...
Well, he has also got his pilot's license. So,
Oh, so he could.
although he'll be...
I better not say that in case the CIA are listening.
What?
I can't say it, can I? Because, well, if he's got his pilot's license.
It's probably lapsed because he obviously hasn't flown for a while.
Yeah, let's move on before I commit some kind of terrorist offence.
I don't think you would. I don't know what you're talking about.
No. It's precious as well. Carry on. Move on. Move along. Nothing to see here.
Is there something you're not...
No, it was to do with the Twin Towers.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But it was in very bad taste, so carry on.
Yeah, but he would have died, wouldn't he? So...
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not saying that he did it.
What the fuck are you... What?
I'm not saying that Grandad did the Twin Towers attack.
Yeah, I'm aware. What? Never mind. Just being weird and like, ooh, I can't say that, can I? Ooh.
Well, this is the kind of world we live in now.
Yeah, but no one gives a shit about us.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares about us.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I might be delivering pizzas next week.
You got nothing to worry about. You've got.
I'm gonna have
white
ham and
enough
pineapple.
skin that they don't care.
Did you know pineapples have got cocaine in them now?
What?
Apparently, pineapples have more cocaine in them than they ever have had before. I saw it on
Because of
Facebook. It
all
must
the
be true. Which is why
Cocaine being grown.
it's now perfectly okay to put them on pizzas. I love doing this to his brother.
Shut up. Just fuck off.
Is a pineapple equal to a banana? Equality for the
No,
fruit.
because it tastes
Is a
like
pineapple a fruit?
shit.
So it was a... and
Whenever you eat
banana's
the
a
shit.
herb.
Sorry, I keep talking over star stuff. What did you say?
Banana's a herb, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Did you also know that aubergine's a fruit?
I didn't know it was. I thought it was a vegetable, but
No, it's technically a berry.
I thought it was an emoji.
It must be
but-
true. So Richard Osman told me, which means it is true because
I
he's...
thought berries were fruit anyway. But that's one
Yeah,
of those
but
weird
it's
things that's like,
a
oh,
fruit.
well,
it's
actually,
it's from the
it's
berry
not.
family.
Mary Berry is.
What? Shut the fuck up.
Okay, maybe you should try and get back onto equality. Let's talk about.
Banana's better because have you ever tried to put a pineapple up your ass?
What?
Have you?
No, but like a pineapple's objectively a worse shape for everyone involved.
I didn't want to think of that.
Okay, a banana's not painful to hold.
Yeah, but it would have to. It couldn't be too ripe.
Depends where you
would
hold it.
What?
Well, if it was too ripe, it would just kind of squish to mush while you were trying to.
It's still better than putting a pineapple up there.
Yeah, I suppose. That made me think of, have you seen The Snowman?
Yes.
He puts a pineapple on his face as a nose, doesn't he?
Okay.
With a tomato and a carrot. I feel like this is disintegrating. Just much like a banana would
Right.
if you tried to...
I'm going to talk about representation in films.
Right. Go on then.
Start with the Oscars.
Okay.
So recently, the Oscars happened, and I don't remember his name.
Who?
I'll Google it.
What film are we talking about?
Parasite won, and I can't
yeah.
remember the guy's name.
Hasn't
Bong Joon-ho.
Trump been moaning about that, hasn't he?
A lot of people have been moaning because it won in both the categories of foreign film and I think it won Best Picture.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, a lot of idiots are complaining because they're like, oh, but you shouldn't be able to win both at the same time.
The thing is that I really want to see that film. In fact, I really wanted to see it before it won, but purely because it had been nominated.
See, I thought it was a horror film, so I didn't like.
I know very little about it, but
Well, I've learned more about it since it's apparently a lot about like class struggles,
right. Okay.
and I think from the trailer, basically, a Korean guy who is working class is paid by a more upper class family to teach their son English.
Right. Interesting.
That's all I know about it, but it's sort of, I've heard people describing it as sort of demonstrating how capitalism forces working class people to basically cannibalize each other.
Ah.
I'm not sure if that's literally with the film, but
That would be the horror film version.
Yeah.
well, it is sort of a horror film, but I don't think it's the sort of horror film that I was thinking of. Because Parasite does sound like a very sort of jump scary horror film kind of name.
Yeah.
So he won that, and a lot of people were angry. I was like, oh, it shouldn't be able to be a Korean film and win Best Picture because that's not American, even though one of the other pictures lined up was 1917, which is British. So it's clear that they're just not really thinking about that. It's that sort of American imperialism, but also like that English imperialism.
But I think you've kind of got to accept that it's going to be inevitable that people are going to moan about anything that breaks boundaries like that. Because, I mean, looking at TV and cinema in general, it could be a lot better. But I can at least see that there are efforts to move things in a more in a better direction for equality across the board. But when you do that, you are always going to make some people feel uncomfortable because they're not used to it. Any change is going to be met with a certain level of challenge, complaint about it, because some people just don't like change.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people aren't served well by things changing because the current system works for them. It's built for them. It was built by people like them. I think to work for them.
But I do agree with you. But I think there's also an awful lot of people who don't even realise that the discomfort they're feeling isn't. It is because there's a change happening, but it's almost like because you've been, say for instance, you've always been surrounded by mostly white people. And a few coloured people, black people. Is coloured racist? Is that a racist term?
Not explicitly. It depends how you use it. It's
I don't like using the term black either, but ethnic. I don't know. Whatever's the right.
Well, the general term.
It's not meant derogatory.
Term is people of colour. That's the
people of colour. Okay.
Sort of official terminology, but if you were saying black, then that would be more specific, because a big problem with that label is that it can refer to a huge range of people that have very much differing levels of advantage. So, like, it's saying even Asian to generally refer to people of Asian descent.
Yeah.
If you look at statistics, although on average Asians are better off in the UK and America, if you take Chinese Asians out of the equation, then that figure goes down significantly.
Yeah. What I was trying to make a point about was, though, that you may feel like things are being unfair, that the balance is being unfairly redressed. In terms of, right, okay, so here's a situation. You've got a job, an employer has a job role to fill, and they currently employ, say, 70% white people and 30% non-whites.
Right.
And they have the policy of collecting people's information to ensure that there is equality in the workplace, and their target is to have 50-50. Yeah.
Right.
This is just plucking numbers out of the air. So in that particular interview, if they are going to strive to redress the imbalance in their current workforce, then the non-whites will stand a better chance in that interview, because they're trying to increase the percentage of non-whites that they
In
employ.
that one particular company, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. I'm not entirely sure what the figures are for demographics in the UK for percentages of white people and different things, but that gets a lot mixed up between
I think
different ethnicities,
my-
which
my-
are kind of white, but like not.
My
in
point
the same
is,
way.
my point is, I think along the lines of what you said in that particular company, that when you look at that as an isolated case, just that interview, that job role, then it may seem like it's an unequal kind of equation. But when you take it as a whole and you take into account the fact that
It also depends.
there's
on,
more than twice as many white people have had the opportunity of getting those jobs than blacks, then
what
it's
kind
redressing
of
a balance.
job is it? Is it even? Because if it's like a news organization, then it would be quite good for someone or a company of like that wants to get a broad range of people.
Yeah.
Be quite good to get people from different backgrounds to diversify what they're making, basically.
I'm not sure what the what the law is on. There are accepted roles, aren't there? Like for instance, if you're casting. I mean, I know we've talked about the whites and blacks issues of representation in films and that, but when you're casting for a role based on gender, you can discriminate gender-wise because the role is a particular gender.
Right.
So in that instance, obviously, auditioning for that role, you under law, it's I think some kind of exception is applied.
I mean, that's not really a issue of how to cast it, really. It's more what the story's written around.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at every Star Wars film, apart from the new ones, there's this, I think it's called the Bechdel test, which is to basically ensure that female characters are represented in media. It's that sort of test that they have to have two female characters that talk to each other about something other than men.
Yeah.
Or something that a man has done.
Right. Yeah.
And there are very few female characters in all Star Wars films except the new ones.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any in the first three.
So it's not just about how many characters there are in particular roles, it's about what their role is within the story.
Particularly, I mean, there's a big difference between, and this comes into a lot with LGBT representation, there's a big difference between having no representation and having bad representation.
And I suppose that's a similar kind of attitude difference in society between, say, for instance, referring to Mum as Suzanne Brill or referring to her as Paul Brill's wife. I guess it's giving, like, I mean, that, you saying about the female characters talking about something other than men and their kind of story. It's giving them their own identity, I suppose, rather than making it related to a male issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's definitely a problem where there's not enough strong female main characters.
Really good film I watched recently. I can't remember what it was called offhand, but it was about the news organisation.
News of the World.
No. It was set in America. The Murdochs were in it, but it was about a TV. What was it called? TV guy. What's her name was in it? That's in Sex Education. Charlize Theron.
No.
No what?
She's not in Sex Education.
Isn't she?
Emma do you mean Maeve?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's played by Emma Mackey.
I thought she was in Sex Education.
No, she looks nothing like Maeve. She does look a lot like
She did in that film.
Margot Robbie, who you might be thinking of, I don't know.
Oh, that's maybe why I thought, wow, she's a really good actress, because... Actually, do you think, funnily enough, do you think that's something... Do you think calling female actresses is sexist?
Not particularly.
Because I know there is a... I have heard it complained about when people talk about somebody as an actress as being their kind of...
But like, if you were to make a big point of sort of like, oh, they're an actress, not an actor, then that would be a bit weird.
Yeah. So, in terms of equality, what shall we talk about next?
Well, I was talking about LGBT representation.
Yeah.
There's a good, I think, underrated YouTuber who does videos on this.
Is this
It's
Contra?
no,
No.
it's
Contrabassoon.
someone that's actually a lot smaller.
Contrabass saxophone.
No, I'm trying to
Contra Rebels.
remember what to call it. I think it's Rowan Ellis.
Contrary.
Yeah, here we go.
Control.
I think I mentioned this video proving that compare the market meerkats are
See, I
gay.
actually find it quite interesting when I don't get people's issues with gender stuff. There's a lot of people that can't.
Did you think gender dust?
Gender stuff. There's a lot of people that can't deal with the evolving role, the evolution of gender roles in society, and what, how things are. Because I mean, I actually find it fascinating looking at that. This thinking, I don't actually know by looking at that picture whether or not that's female, male, or I say that they are female or male, or whether or not they, biologically, or whether or not they identify as female or male. But I find it fascinating that it doesn't actually matter to me. And I find it an interesting. There's a character in Adventures in the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Well, they're a lesbian cis woman.
What does cis mean again?
That you're the gender that you were assigned at birth.
What?
Right, hang on.
I didn't
You're
actually hear you, that's why I said it.
Cisgender, then you're the gender that you were assigned at birth.
So does that mean I am?
Basically not transgender. Yes.
What does cis stand for then?
It doesn't stand for anything, it's a prefix. It's used in things other than...
Oh, I assumed it was like an acronym.
It's a Latin prefix. Like trans is the opposite side of, cis is the same side of.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. So I'm trying to think of another. You get like transcontinent.
I know with that, the name of the actor who plays that person, their name is quite...
I can't actually remember what her name was at the beginning of but I know he is now Theo.
Yeah. But the name of the actor is Lachlan, which is kind of a male name, but it's also one of those names that possibly could... It's not very common anyway.
I can't tell whether or not they are biologically male or female, and it doesn't matter. But I find it fascinating that kind of ambiguity is, I think, a lot more prevalent than...
Hello.
Oh, live phone call. is a lot more prevalent.
I'm just going to come out of the living room.
Than people have historically. No, sorry, Star Stuff's taking a phone call live on podcast.
Now TV, no, we don't.
Right.
We've got Sky Go. Sorry, what?
You went on a weird thing about I don't know what. But basically about representation in LGBT representation in film and TV. This video, I believe they do have several videos that are along similar lines, but this one is one that I have watched.
Mm-hmm.
It basically sort of looks
What is it called for the listeners and viewers?
Liberation versus Assimilation in Queer Cinema.
And this is Rowan Ellis on YouTube. Liberation versus Assimilation in Queer Cinema. Right, okay.
Right, so that was basically going through how there's just having some sort of representation there, which is something, and that like how obvious it is to the story and how centered the story is on queer characters, but also the type of representation that is, in which, you know, are they being laughed at? Are they being played for comedic effect here? Is their love just in the background, or does it actually explore the unique issues they face?
I have to say, with Sabrina, I feel like it is a very good approach to it.
Yeah. Well, for me,
one of the main characters.
What season are we on now? Season 3?
3, I think we've just finished.
For me, there is a journey for that character, and it's almost like your comfort with where that character is now has been a journey that you've taken with them, because in the first season, I remember feeling quite in a similar way to that other series that we watched. It's got I don't know whether they're male or female. They're the one that's got the Starbuck actress who is older. Can't remember, but anyway, at the start you feel some slight sort of, not discomfort, but not necessarily really feeling that you understand that character as deeply. But at the same time, I think that mirrors that character's point in life at that stage, in that they don't really understand their own character as much as they do now.
The Sabrina one, I wondered if the actor was also trans, because I feel like they would bring more to it than somebody just acting. Although acting, can be very good, but it is something that if they have an actual personal experience, they can put so much more into it.
Yeah.
Plus, it's also not discriminating against them for various other reasons. But then the character is also just naturally that character. Nobody makes a big fuss about it. It's just it's obvious what it is, but it's normal.
One thing I find very interesting about this, and this often happens actually when we play video clips, or when you bring video clips to these podcasts, and they're sometimes quite long. And I think it's possibly because it's often getting late on a Sunday night, but I find it quite challenging focusing and concentrating, because there's a lot of information coming at you all at the same time. And I think that what that revealed to me, because I became more interested in that clip as we watched it, was that it's easy when you're being asked to actually think about something and talk about something and discuss it, to find that tiring, and it's easier to just relax and be the way you are.
Well, I think with something like that, because they do talk about
yet.
Well,
let me finish my point. Sorry, I don't mean to tell you off in public. Mainly because I'm going to lose it if I don't complete it in one go.
He's already lost.
I think it's important to be able to. I think it's the talking about it that is the important thing.
Right.
There are, as she She, cis, cis. So cis is to do with gender. See, this is the thing. I'm
well, cis
uninformed.
Cis is a term that's used outside of that, but it's most commonly used like
in LGBTQ terms. It's.
But like, if you say someone's cis or trans, you assume they mean gender.
Yeah. But you see, the thing is that I think the more you talk about it, the more comfortable you become with the whole lack of understanding that you have of a subject. And quite often, and when we were watching that, I was thinking, this is fascinating, because I'm getting more interested in it, because I'm hearing, the more I'm listening to it, the more I'm feeling it's unbiased. Whereas at the start, I was coming to it with more of a kind of it is that criticism approach, rather than just a researched analysis of a situation.
Right.
It does. The more I watched of it, the less I felt that it was biased. Whereas it's easy to assume that it is biased when maybe that's my bias. Maybe that my natural state was coming to it was I witnessed in myself. I felt like, for God's sake, just kind of. Because, I mean, what was coming up in there was the difference between the La Cage aux Folles and the Birdcage.
Yeah.
Now, I immediately thought to myself, when she was saying about the gay couple being, or the drag queen, I can't remember exactly what was said, but being treated more as a sort of a comedy character. Now, that made me immediately think of Everyone's Talking About Jamie, the musical.
Right.
Because in that, and also in... Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I'm not so familiar with the film, but I am familiar with the musical. There is a lot of comedy in those characters, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, it's sort of that difference.
It's how it's
laughing with someone, laughing at someone.
And I think maybe that is that journey, because in Everyone's Talking About Jamie, you get taken on a journey with that character.
But they showed a clip from the film Pride,
right,
in which the gay characters joke with one another about gay issues.
Yeah,
and it's pretty funny. But that's not like them taking the piss out of those gay people. Those gay people are making the jokes themselves, and they're funny.
I feel like for a lot of people who find it difficult to engage with the whole debate, I feel like some of it is because they've been programmed to feel like it's always that, like when gay people or LGBTQ people talk about it, that it's always in complaint rather than it can be just making commentary on the way things are. And that's not necessarily... Yes, we all know how things should be in some situations.
Well, we don't all know that. A lot of people don't. And no as well.
Yeah, sorry, that was the wrong words. But I mean, yeah, you and I, we all in this room know how things should be in certain situations. I think, but I mean, I'm prepared to accept that there are, you've grown up in a different world from the one that I grew up in at your age, so there are going to be different challenges in understanding things.
Like I was going to say earlier, particularly they make a point about a lot of the time these characters are changed or written in certain ways to pander to a wider audience that is mostly straight.
Yeah.
And I'm not like calling you out or anything, but I'm honestly quite shocked that you didn't know what cis meant.
Well, I still can't think of what it's lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer.
Well,
is it queer?
Queer is more of a catch-all term.
So what's the Q on the end for? If you've already got lesbian, bi, and gay in there?
Well, because some people aren't lesbian, bi, and gay, and are LGBTQ+.
What's the plus?
Everything else.
See, I mean,
it's sort of people that are queer but don't want to be defined by a certain thing.
There's a perfect example of what I was meaning when I was saying about the tendency for people to... Because it would be easy for me to hear you say that you're quite shocked that I didn't know what cis meant as a criticism. But the more I discuss it with you and the more I hear about it, the more I realise, actually, it's not a criticism. It's just an observation of the fact that the both of us have a different kind of place that we're coming from. It, you know, it's you informing me that the world that you grew up in, is you're more likely to be shocked by somebody not knowing what cis means than somebody from the world I grew up in. So it's both. You know, by you saying that you're shocked, you're not attacking me in saying that.
No,
you're just telling me what you've just observed, and there's no reason why I should feel defensive about that. It's in fact, you're helping me to understand where I've come from as well,
right?
And where you've come from. So I think what I'm trying to say is that I think the discussion. I think when people just say, "Oh, there's just two genders," or you know, I mean, the world is a lot more understanding now of homosexuality than they are of gender issues.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think things are heading in the right direction. But I think the most important thing is that the discussion isn't ignored. It isn't, you know, it's important to talk about things. It's important not to just act. And this applies to everything, not just equality issues or gender issues or race issues. It applies to everything, that it's important to keep talking about stuff, because when you stop is when the status quo, the kind of that's what kind of fascism wants to happen, isn't it?
It's this sort of thing of what humans tend to fear the most is what they don't understand or what they don't know.
But you can turn that around.
Yeah.
You know, like when we went to the applicants open evening at the uni last week for you, and possibly me as well, I felt in that environment, all of those people that we spoke to, I felt excited by the intellectual stimulation, because there wasn't this kind of, this is the way the world is and we just live in it and we accept it. There was challenge, there was enthusiasm in learning. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that stems from not just taking facts or theories or the way things have always been out of books,
but sort of as opposed,
but it's talking about actually research.
Yeah, as opposed to what school would be, where you are just sort of told things, and while some teachers would go into it in more depth, like they don't have to. You can just learn what's on the curriculum, even if you're interested in a particular area.
I suppose there's a difference between being taken somewhere and actually exploring it yourself.
Well, that's the idea of sort of it's more of a sort of culture around you, I guess. Like, I mean, with that in particular, like you saying that a lot of new information was there for you, but like watching that video is probably a lot easier to understand for someone who's already part of that sort of culture, I guess.
And I think the other thing as well is
when they understand all the terms.
It's whether or not you engage with a subject defines whether or not it's interesting. You've got to kind of, I think in today's society, it's so easy to just put the onus on the creator of any material to entertain you, to make things interesting for you, to excite you, to tantalize you, to provide the mental fodder for you. Whereas sometimes it might actually be better to actually make an effort to be interested in something. And you might get something out of it that you're not kind of expecting as a result of that, when you engage with it and not expect it to do all the work.
Right. Yeah, I think sort of the aim of any good art should be to challenge its audience, basically.
Not spoon feed.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of problems with that in sort of more popular media.
Although, is it? Is it not both? Because we're discussing this. I'm thinking, yeah, but there are axes involved.
Yeah,
there is a role for being spoon-fed. I enjoy going to the cinema and just turning my brain off.
It's more complicated than just this isn't really avant-garde and spectacular. It didn't confuse me, therefore it must be a bad film.
Mm. But I suppose the thing is, if you're in that kind of experience where you are just going to switch off your brain and you want to just enjoy something without a challenge, a mental challenge, you've got to still be aware that you're not being fed aware of what you're being fed.
This is really evident in music. With like avant-garde music, like that has actively hurt me to listen to it sometimes. Like, I get a headache listening to some sorts of music.
Yeah.
I mean, on the flip side of that, the sort of easy listening pop sort of stuff, I get a bit of a headache from that as well, because it's just so repetitive and I get frustrated at it. It's a sort of places, a balance there.
I feel like I need to be drawing things to a close very soon because I potentially could be driving in the morning.
Okay. I mean, it is a big subject to try and put into a relatively small time frame.
It's been strange not being pissed.
Yeah, I guess.
I wonder whether we're in... Do you know, I was thinking that earlier on. I was thinking, I'm worried that we're not going to be as entertaining. You know, like Elton John in Rocket Man, where he's like, what if I'm crap without the drugs? We're like, what if we might actually find that we're...
But I mean, that's another...
It's just a different side, isn't it?
Example of queer representation that I'm not actually really sure how I feel about it, because...
Beer representation?
No. He's...
Oh, sorry, Rocket Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, okay.
He's he is represented, and it does deal with his issues.
Do you have to be sure how you feel about it? Can you feel conflicting ways about it at the same time?
Well, yeah, but I would have to think about how to think of it, really.
I suppose one of the difficult things for you is that you didn't grow up in that world.
Well, yeah, there is that. But also, like, the more positive side of his life isn't shown at all.
Right.
It's his rise to fame and his fall from glory and his issues with the villain, who is another gay character.
Yeah.
That are shown more.
But there's definitely that element of no emotional attachment with his father there as well. And mother, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. But anyway, I actually really quite enjoyed this, being sober for a podcast.
Okay. I mean, we would probably... I would try to talk more about black representation and other kinds of representation. Quickly about the Oscars. The other person that... Actually, no, I think this was the Golden Globes that won an award of note was Taika Waititi, I think, for Best Director.
Yes.
For Jojo Rabbit, which I very much enjoyed and think is probably the most important film I've seen this year. Or will see this year.
Yeah. I liked the positive feeling that came out of watching that.
I think,
although...
I mean, I won't try to give too much away.
I feel like we're at the wrong end of developments at the moment in history.
Yeah. What I found interesting was at the start, it kind of, and he's said this in interviews, like it has a Beatles song in German played at the start with like a montage of like cutting between the character and footage from the Rise of the Nazis.
Yeah.
Sort of get that feeling of
and they're singing in German, by the way. Get that feeling of like Beatlemania around Hitler, because he was actually very popular at the time, and the people supporting him felt really good about it.
Yeah,
but it's that sort of throughout the start of the film, it sort of morphs it into like sort of the way that it's directed, even though that you know it's horrible, it's trying to make you feel good.
Well, it's seeing it's seeing it from a 10-year-old boy's point of view.
Yeah.
So,
but like you feel good when he succeeds, even though he's succeeding at becoming a monster.
Yeah.
Until that darker twist comes in. I mean, you're aware of it, like it has that dark overtone the whole way through, but just from it just being what it is, really.
Yeah.
But it's the sort of tone of the film is very light-hearted.
Yeah.
Until it all turns, and that clicks with the main character.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of comedy in the opening bit, but that becomes more disparate later on. It becomes a lot more horrific, really.
Yeah.
But one thing that I did notice from that was there was a lot of complaints that women were snubbed in winning those awards. There was Greta Gerwig was nominated for Best Director for Little Women,
right?
Which, whilst I enjoyed and thought it was well directed, I liked Jojo Rabbit more because I think it actually explored a more pressing issue.
Yeah, I think it was. I don't know. I would say I found it quite original. I'd be surprised if there wasn't something kind of with a similar kind of feel to it already, but it did feel more out of the ordinary than Little Women, although Little Women I did think was a really good film.
It explored quite traditional themes of marriage.
Yeah.
And
I did, yeah, it would be a difficult one for me because I like them both.
I do enjoy both of them, but a lot of people were sort of complaining that it was men being given these awards, but at the same time it's sort of like, okay, but there is still progress being made there because Bong Joon-ho being Korean, big progress, and also Taika Waititi's got indigenous family from New Zealand.
You've also got to remember as well that, I mean, you've has
a Jewish side of his family, I think, as well.
You get these complaints every year, especially recently in the Oscars. I think you've got to remember as well that kind of tradition, not tradition, it's not really a tradition, but that complaint of some kind of prejudice within the Oscars.
I mean, it's definitely
within the industry. It is part of the narrative.
What?
The fact that every year there is some complaint about misrepresentation or underrepresentation of whatever groups is part of the narrative of Hollywood, in that it is Hollywood keeping that discussion going and keeping the kind of argument kind of alive, if you like. If nobody said anything about it, then things would just continue the way they are. But the only way that things can improve is if people engage in debate about it.
That is a very cynical take on it. I don't think that's what's happening. It's just that before it has been very white and very male dominated. This is the first time that a film with another language has won Best Picture.
Yeah, but that would never have happened if there hadn't been criticism in the past.
Well, if it was diverse in the first place, then that criticism wouldn't exist, and it might have already happened.
But is that not the same argument as when people are trying to claim that they don't see the colour or the difference?
What?
When people we've had the thing come up about when people think that they're sort of or trying to claim that they're not biased or racist or because they don't actually see a difference, then I've lost my thread now.
Well, those stories
could exist. It's just you're talking about like the real world, not like a narrative story. Yeah, like it doesn't work like Hollywood in the real world here.
Hollywood is in the real world.
Well, no, the industry of Hollywood is, but it doesn't work like it does in the movies.
Yeah, no, I was talking about the industry.
But it's sort of like the industry is promoting Hollywood, promoting people that are
narrative
in Hollywood,
in terms of when you tell the
white.
story of history, like that kind of narrative. That part of the discussion and the debate that progresses the history of Hollywood is defined by the discussion that goes on. Part of the progress has to be, you can't have progress without discussion and debate about it. You can't get to a better place without actually people moaning about where you are now.
Right, but like that's not a good. That isn't Hollywood wanting that. Like they keep saying, "Oh, but we're diverse."
So who is it that's doing the criticizing of it?
What?
Who is it that's criticising Hollywood for not making those choices?
Various people of those groups and people supporting those groups
who are involved in Hollywood.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, the minority groups, because one of the big criticizers last year was the guy that did that one. The film that a lot of people thought should have won, that was quite comedic a lot of the way through and then had a shocking ending. Black Klansman, the director of that film, he was one of the big critics of Green Book winning because of the way that it treated the race issue and the different, the access thing, that the black guy in Green Book was almost, he was like the co-star, if you like. He was treated in the way that he related to the main character being the driver, the white guy, and the driver's kind of... Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that the guy that did the complaining was a Hollywood director.
Yeah, but like, so he doesn't control what the Academy are. There's being a part of Hollywood and being part of the mainstream. Like, the people that are in the Academy, they get to vote on this stuff. They're not the people that are actually making this stuff.
No, but the people who are defining Hollywood, the people who are creating the art, creating the films, can... I agree with their criticisms, and I agree with the discussion going on, and I agree that there is a disparity that needs to be addressed. But what I'm saying is, it's because the criticism is going on that it can be addressed,
Right, but if the issue wasn't there, then it wouldn't need to be addressed.
I'm not quite sure what point you're trying to make, because the logical ending of that is that if there weren't problems, then we wouldn't have anything to solve.
No, there would be new problems to solve, but that particular thing, like, we would progress from something. There is always progress to be made.
Yeah.
People aren't creating issues by talking about them. They are issues already.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying people are solving issues by talking about them.
I mean, it's only recently that...
And then it's a necessary thing to actually make progress.
Yeah, I mean, it's only more recently that the people that would criticise this sort of thing have even been given a platform.
Yeah. So that in is evidence that we have got that far.
Right.
Through previous discussions.
Yeah, I mean...
we're making progress. We're criticising the system and we're making progress, so let's keep that progress going, is what I'm saying. We're talking about it now.
Okay, right. Right. I'm not sure entirely. I kind of get where you're going, but like, it was quite confusing how you were saying it. It sort of sounded like you were saying it as, oh, Hollywood's making up this narrative to like sell more tickets or something.
No, not at all. No, that's not what I meant. If that came across that way, it wasn't. I didn't use the right words then.
Right.
But I mean, that's an interesting thing in itself. In the, the communication, when you're talking about discussing stuff, communication can be a tricky thing anyway. Especially when you've been going for as long as we have.
Right.
Focus and concentration starts to break down, so we should perhaps draw it to a close.
I mean, so I think your point is to discuss, but also my point to add to that would be listen to the people that have been saying it for decades.
Yeah.
And that just haven't been listened to enough so far. Make sure that you're not part of the problem, and then you can learn better and help out.
Yeah. There's so much further you could go with this subject, but I feel like we need to, because every time you saying a new thing, I'm like sort of wanting to come back with something else. But I think you've just got to stop the recording at some point, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. But
okay. Right, it feels like you've got something on your chest, so just get it out of the way.
No,
please.
No, I insist, because we've been recording for over 2 hours and 20 minutes.
That we should keep discussing.
Yeah, but not literally on this podcast. I mean, in general, the world needs to keep discussing. You've got to take a rest and come back and discuss some more when you've got a fresh mind as well.
Right. Yeah, I do agree. We need to wrap up. Because I haven't had a shower in a few.
You don't need to tell them that.
Well, it might be obvious if you're watching, because my hair does look a bit greasy, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it does generally, but...
Right, let's wrap up.
Sure. Right, so I have been Fireball.
I've been the Orbiter.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You seem a bit strained.
I want to go to bed.
Okay, fair enough. And this has been episode 56 of Breaking Bollocks.
Equality. Do you think you and I... Yeah, sorry.
You can continue if you want.
Yeah, we're on the after bit now. Do you think you and I are equal?
I mean, in terms of how we view each other, probably. Although that might not come across with how we insult each other. But legally, no, we are not, because I'm younger than you. And also LGBT, so that makes me less legally equal than you. And generally socially equal than you. And also disabled, which makes me less equal than you.
Okay, I don't know how to stop. Stop.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.